Alright, so I'm back and I'm going to do another tutorial video. This time it's going to be on a song called, what is it called? Love something. Love is Alive by Gary Wright. And this song, it basically features a synth bass. Um, Now, what I wanted to do, why am I doing this on my Kurzweil instead? So I'm using the Kurzweil PC3K8. I'm going to be doing it on the Kurzweil first, and then I'm going to be doing the other one on the Kronos. And the big thing that I wanted to discuss was how my thought process doesn't change from synth to synth. It's purely just the application. And so, when I think about what the sound's doing, when I think about what I want the sound, how can I massage the sound to kind of get it the way I want it to sound, like that kind of thing. I think about, okay, what do I need the sound to do? And then how I do that, the practical application of how I do that is just going to be specific to the synth. Now, certain synths have certain characteristics that will make them sound a particular way. And the Kurzweil so the way the Kurzweil works is when you edit an application or a program, it actually has what are called algorithms. And so if you look at the different algorithms, and I'm not going to go into huge detail, basically every single one of these are digital signal processors. So what you can't see is on the left-hand side, you start with the pitch. So this is your pitch and your amp, and that feeds into these. Actually, technically, it goes pitch over here on the left, goes through these, and then your amp's on the right. But basically, more or less what's happening is your pitch and your amp are kind of somewhat, I'm not going to say removed from the chain, but your sound gets processed through these things. And different algorithms have different ways of combining these. So you can see as I flip through the algorithms, and there's a whole bunch of different types, right? It uses additive synthesis and subtractive synthesis to generate its sounds. So I'm actually going to use algorithm 7. And the reason I want to do that is because I know that it has common filters. So it has high pass filter, low pass filter. So here we go. Here, high pass, low pass, saw plus, sine plus, all pass. So these are just kind of common things that are available on most synths. So knowing all in advance what the sound sounds like, I know that this is an algorithm that I'm going to end up using. So that being said, let's take a listen to the actual sound. I want to kind of determine some characteristics of the sound, and then we can use the Kurzweil to build it. Once I'm done building it on the Kurzweil, I'm actually going to create another video where I recreate the sound on the Kronos. And you can see the thought process is actually the exact same. It's just the application on the synth itself. So for example, if somebody were to give me a Roland V synth, let's say, or a Yamaha motif, my thought process on how I would make the sounds would be exactly the same. The application would be exactly the same. It's purely the how on the synth. So how do you add your filter? How do you put it in a particular aspect of the chain, and so on and so forth. So Kurzweil is vastly different, and that's kind of a funny pun. Vast in Kurzweil land stands for variable architecture synthesis technology. So when I say it's vastly different, it's a terrible dad pun. So I apologize for that one. But it is pretty awesome. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let's listen to the sound, listen to some characteristics of the sound, and we'll go from there. Okay, a couple of things that I noticed right away. First off, it's monophonic. It has legato. It has portamento on it. Just it's very fast, but there's portamento there. There is a filter sound that's kind of closing. So it starts off wide open and it closes on the initial attack, and then it closes even further on release. So just listen again, or keep listening rather. Okay. Now, when I hear that sound, I think of a filtered saw, and I think of a triangle wave. And the reason I choose those is because of the characteristic of the roundness of the sound. It is very round. I don't hear a lot of pulsing. I don't hear a lot of detuning in any way. So if there is detuning, it's just very, very, very slight, so you don't get artifacts or you know, noise cancellation and that kind of thing. So let's go back. And under my key map here, I'm going to change this to triangle. So I think that's what, 176? No, close, 178. All right, good enough. So I'm going to go triangle, and now I'm going to add a new layer. New layer. And on my second layer, I'm going to do 174, so a sawtooth. And now one of the funny things about the Kurzweil is it's got sawtooth. So if I just play the sawtooth layer, it's also got a doll wave. Now, the reason I'm not going to use dullest is because this sound is already too closed compared to the most open it is on the actual track. So I'm going to choose one that's a little bit brighter. Like this one. I'm going to use this one. Okay. So the next thing I want to do. So this is both. Oh yeah, let me show you this real quick. So on the Kurzweil, when you've got multiple layers, so you know I've got layer 2 of 2 here, and you can change them layer 1 of 2. With these layers, you can actually mute individual layers within the program. So I can say mute 1, so I only hear layer 2. I can mute layer 2, so I only hear layer 1. And this works so you could do like mute 4 or 5, and then you could say solo. You could say mute active, so whatever screen you're on, whatever layer you're on, it'll mute that, which is super, super handy when it comes to trying to figuring out how is this layer contributing to the overall sound. Something that I wish Kronos did a little bit more easily than it does, but instead you have to go to the amp volume level page, and you can turn the individual levels off for each aspect of the oscillators. But that being said, let's continue where we left off. So let's listen to the sound again. Okay, so let's get this stuff here. So it's monophonic, legato's on, portamento's on, but we need it to be fast. Okay, cool. And under my amp, not my amp envelope, I want to just modify how fast it's attacking. I just want to slow the attack down just a hair. Just a hair. So for what I'm looking at right now, this is actually my ADSR. Just in the Kurzweil land, it looks a little bit different. But the same basic process applies where you have different stages of attack. So instead of having just A, like A for your attack, D for your decay, this has multiple levels of attack, your decay, and then multiple releases. So there's the decay goes into your sustain, which is part of your release, and then your release phase. So you can actually control what that looks like. And then you can do things like loop it if you wanted to. So you can have it attack over and over and over off of a specific time period, off of MIDI clock, and so on. Okay. So next thing I want to do is I want to go back to my algorithm. We'll use algorithm 7 because I'm familiar with it. And we're going to throw in a low pass filter. And I'm going to mute. So I'm just listening to this sound. Okay, so So let's edit the low pass. And what I want to do is I want to figure out where it's going to be closed the most. And that actually sounds pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the opposite layer. Oh. Let's go low pass here. Okay, good. Let's listen to them together. Okay, so one thing that Kurzweil does that I like and I don't like is they're very, very picky on your volume levels when you are trying to play dynamically. It's just a little oversensitive, so if I play really quiet versus starting to play louder, most synths in real life don't have that much of a drastic change. So I'm just going to drop this velocity difference down from 35 to 10. And I have to change my level too, because now what'll happen is it'll just be really loud. So already the sound's starting to get way closer. So let's listen again. Okay. So now I'm hearing the filter where it's closing. It's starting off open and closing depending on the amp envelope. Or I say the amp envelope, rather. It's the envelope generator. So what I want to do is I want to take this low pass frequency and I want to have it controlled by something. So this is where the DSP mod comes in. DSP control is this page over here. DSP mod, when I click on that, shows you how to modify what's in here and what you want to modify it with. So for example, if I want this to be controlled by, I think it's my envelope 2. There we go. So just a total side note, with Kurzweil, something that's really nice that I wish the Kronos did is, let's say you wanted your source to be mod wheel. Well, instead of scrolling through and looking for mod wheel, what you can do is you can press and hold enter and move the mod wheel, or maybe you want it to be the pitch wheel. You can hold enter and move the controller you want, and it automatically assigns it to this source. That's something that I really, really wish Korg would get a hold of and actually do on their synth as well. They kind of do it on a couple of small aspects where, like, for example, if you're assigning your key ranges, you can press and hold enter and then press the key and it'll automatically update to that key. But when it comes to assigning, things like this, you have to press on the touch screen. You have to go find the controller. I really wish you could just press and hold enter and then move the controller you want, and it would just know, okay, this is MIDI 28 or MIDI 24, or in this case, mod wheel. Now, what I wanted to use was my envelope generator, which just happens to be F sharp, like F sharp 5, 6. And I know that because I've programmed Kurzweil for a really long time, so I'm just familiar with a lot of these things already. So what we're doing is we're getting to control how wide this filter is, and the amp envelope gets to control how much it changes. So now I'm going to edit the amp envelope. I'm going to mute the second layer so I can hear just the first layer by itself, so I can hear exactly what's going on. So I'm going to edit this envelope. So it starts off open, has a bit of a sustain. And that's pretty drastic. So maybe what I'll do is I'll bring this up to like 70. This can be 70 as well. And then my release will go from 70 to 0. No, I'm doing it wrong here. So basically what happens is when I release, I want the filter to close even more. Now, something I forgot is in my amp envelope, there is kind of a release on the sound. So if we listen to the actual sound again, when I let go, there is a release. It's not staccato like this is. There is actually a bit of a release. So let's listen. All right, so I'm gonna leave this as is for the time being. I want to go back to my amp envelope and change it so that there is a release. And this release, let's put it up to, let's say 66. Okay, I think that's good. And I'll do the same thing with this one too. So, whoops. Good. And let's go back to envelope and okay. It feels like the filter closes a little bit more. Alright, that sounds alright. Let's go to the other layer. Do the same thing. Same thing. So envelope 2. And envelope 2, let's compare it. So 44, 50, 50, 32. Okay, so 44, 50. So 44, 50. This is 50. And this is like, what, 32 and minus 70. So 32 down here, minus 70. Good. All right. So far, so good. All right, now let's listen to the layers together. Okay, compared to the original. Okay, so it's like it's not opening enough. All right, that sounds a little bit better. We'll try it again. All right, that's a bit better. All right, I'm actually pretty happy with this already. And that only took 20 minutes. Now, that was partially me explaining and giving examples and details, but I'm not going to go a whole heck of a lot further than this. And the only reason for that is because, you know, I don't really use the Kurzweil a whole lot anymore since having the Kronos. So this sound was purely for illustration purposes to show you that it doesn't matter what synth you apply it to. All that matters is the synth capable of delivering what you hear the way you hear it. And so in this case, I am very familiar with the Kurzweil. So it's pretty easy for me to get this sound. So I'm going to save this really quickly here. There. Oh, saved as default. Let's rename that. Did I miss the rename? Save, rename. There we go. All right, what was it called again? Love is Alive. So Gary Lerve, French Canadian. Not that Gary is French Canadian. Nor am I a fan of Celine Dion, but Lerve. There we go. Gary Lerve. Now, if you felt oh so inclined, you can add some sort of effects to it, and so you might insert just a little bit of verb here. All right, all good. So I just wanted to kind of give an example using the Kurzweil, exactly how it would work. Again, notice that my thought process doesn't change. My observations don't change. It's simply how is it applied in the synth itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with another part 2. And in part 2, I'm going to take a look at doing the exact same thing, but this time using the Kronos instead of using the Kurzweil. And you can see how my thought process, again, remains exactly the same. It's just the actual application that changes itself. So how am I putting it in? What filters am I using? Or not the filters, but how am I editing the filters and those kinds of things. So hopefully you enjoyed, and take a look. Look forward to part 2, where we'll take a look at doing it on the Kronos. Thanks.